Welcome back. What if Naruto went to the Akagame Goku universe? Let's find out in this video. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. Let's begin. Revolution. Prologue. The flames of a revolution. Just like people gradually rotting away, countries also eventually collapse. Even the imperial capital of the empire that prospered for almost 1,000 years became corrupted and is now living hell. Evil spirits from all the lands in the form of human run rampant as if everything in this world was theirs. It was the great evil which even the heavens cannot judge. So it comes upon the hands of other men to rid themselves of this great evil. Unfortunately, even the most noble of men who attempted to fight the system found themselves corrupted by the dark temptations of the empire. The great evil was so sweet, so euphoric, so addicting, that even the greatest of wills soon wavered and fell to its dark clutches, be it the pleasures of the flesh, the promise of power, the great sadism and violence upon others, or even the glorious glittering of gold. The empire had it all. So long as the foolish thoughts for change was abandoned and forgotten, then their desires were rewarded, and soon they too became part of the great evil. To those who resisted temptations, the ones who valiantly fought against the system, they who wished for better future, to rid of the firm hold of the corruption within the empire, they too were rewarded. A simple and long-lasting gift in the form of imprisonment. Great men were tossed in jail into the dark gallows bereft of humanity. Their bodies were beaten, battered, and mutilated for every waking moment, undergoing torture the likes of which only the devil himself would enjoy. The flames of change and the will of men were forcefully pacified, their body, mind, and soul broke to the point that they welcomed the embrace of death itself just to end their sufferings. Some were given this gift, people who were made examples of. Their already broken bodies were paraded on the glorious streets of the empire's capital until they were brought up to a stage like a form of twisted entertainment for the residents of the corrupt land. They were laughed upon, they were mocked, and they were degraded and insulted until they received their just deserts, an array of different method of deaths picked by the spectators themselves. Some were hanged and beheaded, they were the luckiest of the bunch. Others were devoured by beasts, their deaths were the most entertaining of them all. Several were burned, cooked, boiled, crushed, flayed, strangled, stoned, poisoned, crucified, or even buried alive. Their cries of agony during their slow death brought an unparalleled amount of joy and euphoria to those who listened on. Martyrs dying for an fading cause. There was no hope, no justice, no more heroes that rose to the call in order to bring about change. But when all hope was gone, a small flame appeared from the distance, a small, weak, and flickering flame which was foreign to this land. No one immediately paid heed to this insignificant dying flame, no one expected it to survive, but slowly and surely the struggling continued on until the flame slowly recovered. Days turned to months, and months turned to years, and eventually the flame was still small, but already burning brightly. By then the flame actually caught someone's attention, a man from the empire who offered the small flame a place to grow and rekindle the flames that it has lost. The recovering flame accepted, joining the man's side. There the flame was unknowingly manipulated, his powers used to for the wrong cause, his great flame served only to fuel the ambitions of the evil known as men. Though as time passed once more, then as the flame slowly recovered, its thoughts became concrete, its memories returned, it was then that it realized what it has done. The atrocities and crimes it was used for, the amount of pain and suffering it brought upon the weak and the innocent. Such an act of betrayal did not sit well for the flame. The once small and tiny flame grew into a large inferno, an angry blaze that promised itself to stand up against the plague which infected this lands. The evil which even the heavens cannot judge shall be burned away by the very flames that this very evil they helped to rekindle. Revolution. The great inferno engulfed an entire city. There were waves upon waves of intense flesh-melting blaze as far as the eye could see. It was an undying conflagration that scourged and desolated what was once a great city of nobility which laid upon the outermost mountainous regions of the empire. Black smoke rose from the burning city, the murky dark fumes scattering all over the wide and heavenly night skies. The smell of burnt and charred flesh wafted through the air, flooding the area surrounding the city with the sickening smell of death, indicative of just how many lives has perished within the inferno. A young man holding a beautiful katana in his right hand silently stood so atop a small cliff which overlooked the burning city. The bright and spiky bangs of his sun-kissed blonde hair that stood out even in the darkest of nights hung low, shadowing his eyes. From his spot he could smell the burning of the flesh, a choking and nauseating smell. Sadly, the smell of fresh death barely affected the young man as he was already desensitized to its presence. The blonde-haired young man was wearing a simple attire, a set composed of a dark blue shirt with the insignia of a white cross in the front, showing his status as a member of the military, a pair of dark blue pants going down to his lower calves, white bandages covering the regions in between his pants, and dark blue boots. His pants were also equipped for combat as the sheath of his blade tied to his left side and holster filled with tools of his trade was strapped to the side of each of his knee. And to top it off, he was wearing both a necklace with the insignia of a leaf surrounded by fire which swayed freely from his neck and a long orange haori decorated by black flames along the edges that bristled with the gentle breeze of the night. As the young man stood over the inferno, he couldn't help but extend his other senses, his nose taking in the smell of death, his ears picking up on the sounds permeating from the burning city. The normal symphony played by the nocturnal animal that inhabited the mountainous range was drowned out by the screams of pain and agony that echoed off the burning city. There were also some shouts of panic and confusion brought about by the nobles waking up for the night and finding themselves surrounded by the flames which soon after burned them to ashes. However, the most disturbing among all the noises from the city were the cries of relief and salvation originating from the broken slaves, sex toys, and lower-classed men and women who were tortured by the nobles for their sick amusement. It was as if they joyously welcomed the incoming flames with open arms. The fact that was not far from the truth, as the inferno that befell upon their city served as a chance to escape for those who were not broken, a beacon of hope for those who lived on. But sadly, the majority of those slaves were long broken. The flames represented their freedom. Freedom from the premises of their earthly flesh, which met a cruel fate under the hands of the nobles. They were just happy that their suffering in the land of the living came to an end. The young man standing atop the cliff dared not to look away, his shadowed eyes never leaving the raging inferno. His normally bright blue eyes were clouded, faded cerulean blue, the eternal proof of his fading vision that assailed him as of late. In the young man's honest opinion, he thought it was too light, such an underwhelming punishment for the crimes that he committed. Those misguided assassinations, murders, and genocides that he thought was for a good cause. He was such a fool. In his moment of weakness, where both his powers and memories were close to non-existent, he let himself get used and manipulated by the Empire. A loyal general and assassin that willingly and happily fought for the side of corruption and injustice. Just though it was maddening for him, for one who initially fought for peace and justice, for him to have been used in such a way that even the blood of the innocent, the blood children, tainted his hands. Why did it take so long for him to come back to his senses? If only it happened earlier, then he could have prevented that tragedies that he personally created. Hell, he could have even already started paving the road towards peace for this corrupt world, but now it was too late. What's done is done, the die has been cast, and now he was extremely pissed. Only once has he found himself so enraged, and that involved witnessing the end of his world in the hands of a madman. The death of all that he cared for, the very same people who in the last desperate gambit threw him into a different world in hopes of sparing him from the cruel fate that awaited in a world of illusions. All they did was unknowingly throw him from one hell to another, and by the time his memories of the past returned, he had enough. He did not want a repeat of the past, an encore performance resulting in the destruction of yet another world due to the machinations of insane men. For that he must act, he must make a statement to this world, and he was going to make sure that the Empire got the message, that they were going to get what was coming to them. The time for peaceful means ended when he was used, it was now the time for action, and he was more than willing to be the necessary evil needed to incite change. Naruto, what have you done? Burning not one but 3 cities of the Empire to the ground. Has your Tigu shattered your sanity into pieces? Have you gone mad? A familiar voice accompanied by the sound of light footsteps reached his ears, such a soft yet stern and powerful tone, belonging to his close friend of this world. His fellow general of the Empire, the pale-skinned sadistic Ice Queen Esdeath. Naruto didn't bother to turn around, his shallow blue eyes still lingering upon the large pyre of his own doing, the flames of the sword in his right hand still flickered ever so slightly against the increasingly cold wind. He knew for a fact that she was still standing behind him, her smooth and long blue hair still cascading downwards like a flowing river as her cold blue eyes gazed upon his back. Judging from her tone, she was here for business, so that must mean she was wearing her military uniform. The set consisting of a military-style white button-up shirt with a black collar that accentuated her cleavage, a white skirt with a black belt where her sword was fastened that went along her top, a set of white boots that went to her high thighs, which acted in tandem with a long pair of black gloves that she always wore. To top things off, she wore a white military cap, completing her ensemble fit for the beautiful general of the Empire. "The Tigu making me insane, huh?" He almost scoffed as those words came out of his mouth. Demon's extract. The Tigu lost an early war of the North, taken forcefully by the Empire by destroying the lives of many. A blood-red chalice filled to no ends with the blood of the beasts that roam this world, an unholy elixir that brings forth madness. The very same elixir you happily consumed a few years ago. The general clad in white found raised a single brow peaked with sudden curiosity. "What's your point?" Goddess's tears. The sacred Tigu of fire given to the eastern lands as a sign of peace by the first emperor, only to be stolen and reclaimed by the current prime minister of the empire, and given to me during my tenure as a loyal general to the empire's army. A golden cup filled to the brim with the tears of the goddess of the sun Amaterasu. A sacred ambrosia that grants enlightenment. Do you really need to ask which one of you delves within the realm of insanity? I think it's really obvious which of the two of us has a sadistic spree and relishes for violence and bloodshed, the one who can commit genocide with a smile on their face. Though if you were going stick with your point, then rather than going insane you could say that I became sane. Yes, a madman finally reaching realm of rationality for the first time. You call this rationale? I understand the need to trample upon the weak, to brutally crush them under our heels, for we are the strongest of the strong, but to point your blade to the empire and its people is far from necessary. If you wanted to kill so much, then you should have just told me. We could have stormed the northern region, trampling upon every tribe which we go up against, basking ourselves in a glorious euphoria of death and carnage. She didn't even bother trying to deny his point about her love of violence and sadism. Those two things were almost second nature to her, to the point that she didn't find any fault in doing such actions. A soft sigh escaped Naruto's lips. I try my best to understand you, and I truly do understand, but you fail to see what drove me to burn down 2 cities, and I'm afraid you never will as long as you hold on to your philosophy of the survival of the fittest. We truly are opposites in both our philosophies, our allegiance, and our elements. It was as if we're destined us to eventually part ways. That doesn't need to happen. You can still turn back and apologize for your actions. I am sure that Empire would forgive you for burning down a city or two in your fit of rage. Please don't go. Don't leave and become our enemy, my enemy. Just tell me what we can do. Her voice was uncharacteristically pleading with a hint of desperation. In all intents and purpose it wasn't far from the truth. Despite her lack of empathy to people she considered weak, Esdeath had a soft spot for her comrades and those who she considered strong. He was both. He was her first friend within the Empire, the first person to fight by her side through each and every battle. He was her light, the only person who comforted her during her own moments of weakness and insecurity, the only person even aware that such moments existed. He was the driving force responsible for her current level of strength, the person who kept pushing her forward, even when she faced an obstacle that she couldn't pass. He was the only person she acknowledged as her equal, the only person whose strength and ability in combat rivaled her own. He was the closest person to her cold and sadistic heart, and he was only moments away from tearing it into pieces. What's done is done. I did what I had to do, Esdeath. I could no longer afford to turn a blind eye at the atrocities that this empire has done. His left hand slowly rose, rough and calloused fingers tracing along his clouded blue eyes from left to right. Once finished, his hand fell back to its previous place. It's really ironic that I finally see the truth when I'm slowly losing my eyesight. Talk about me being airheaded if it took that long for me to realize the truth. He chuckled bitterly. This empire is a wretched hive of scum and villainy. Inhumanity run rampant on a daily basis, while those who scream and act out for change are taken down, beaten, tortured, and if they are lucky enough, executed. Is this what we fight for? Is this the nation we are willing to lay our lives on the line for? An empire of filth built upon the corpses of the poor and the downtrodden. An empire that continuously oppresses the weak and helpless, unwilling to change their corrupt system. I don't understand. Is that your reason for doing all this? For the sake of the weak? Why would you do that? Why would someone as strong as you care for them? Because I believe in the philosophy known as the will of fire, that love shall lead to peace. What we have now is false peace gained through both oppression and corruption. To my faded eyes, this empire runs with the ideal known as the curse of hatred, that peace can only come through the use of power. I have already seen what this curse can do, and through it I lost all that I loved and cherished. Never again shall allow such a thing to happen. Not now, not ever. Though he was losing the ability to see, he could now clearly see and feel every lingering presence in the conflagration. Even within the flames he could see it, the pitch-black souls of the nobles that resided in the burning city. Greed and corruption has already tainted man's soul to the point that absolute darkness has enveloped what was once a shining beacon of hope, peace, and salvation. I can see it, Esdeath, the light and darkness within men, and all I see as I gaze upon the cities built by nobility is utter darkness as far as the eye can see. Total darkness that engulfs and extinguishes the small amount flickering lights that slowly fades to the void. Esdeath opted to remain silent, hands crossed against her chest, her blue eyes peering through her close friend's back as she listened ever so intently to the words that came out of his mouth. I love this world, after all it presented me a second chance in life. That's why I would rather die than do nothing as the Empire's actions continue to slowly destroy this beautiful world. Though it is hypocritical of me, a person who wants peace. I know full well that peace cannot be achieved without change, and change cannot be accomplished without some bloodshed and violence. That is why I will stand up, I will become the necessary evil that shall go against the corrupt empire. This world needs to be reborn, and what better way to do so by cleansing the empire with my flames. Like the ancient cities that were consumed by flames and brimstone by the divine judgment of God. Yes, I will show this empire the strength of my will. The will that demands change. The general of the empire shifted her eyes towards the ground, an act of silent contemplation as she tried her best to understand her friend's plight. Sadly, she couldn't. Esdeath couldn't put herself in his shoes and think of why he was feeling enraged enough to torch 2 cities filled with nobles to the ground. What was wrong with the empire? What was wrong with kicking down and taking advantage of the weak? She just couldn't understand, it was beyond her comprehension. Would you reconsider your actions? She found herself asking before she even realized it. Her mind still thoroughly confused. No. Naruto replied without hesitation. This time it was her turn to sigh, leave it to her fellow general to be stubborn at times like these. Very well. If that is your wish then you leave me no choice. She drew the sword which rested upon its scabbard on her waist. A long rapier which she used and wielded in combat. You know full well of my ideals, that I follow the idea of the survival of the fittest. The strong shall live and the weak shall die. Show it to me the strength of the flames that you keep hidden within you. The flames that will incite this change that you speak of. Show me its true strength so that I will have the pleasure of extinguishing your foolishness before your very eyes. I will beat you out of your idiocy and if push comes to shove to prevent you from leaving. Her killing intent flooded the area, a cold and deadly feeling that would bring even the strongest and most experienced warriors to their knees. I will break you. A dry chuckle escaped the blonde's lips as the killing intent washed over him, not even affected in the slightest of such a hostile intent. Better men has tried and failed. What makes you think that you're the one who has the ability to break my will? Well, sometimes it takes a woman's touch to bend even the mightiest of men's will. You'll find myself to be an exemption to the rule. That's what they all say before I break them. He shook his head, blonde locks bristling against the nightly wind. You never change, still the same as ever. That shaking of his head soon as he opened his mouth to speak once more, this time using a more solemn tone. For what's it worth, I'm really sorry that it had to turn out this way, Esdeath, but I'm afraid we must part ways. Save your apologies for when you're chained up to a wall, spending every waking moment of your existence in pain as I punish you for your transgressions. For the crimes of burning 2 cities of the empire, I, General Esdeath of the empire, shall take you down. I'll pass since 1, I don't feel like losing here today, and 2, I'm not really a masochist, so I won't like getting punished by you. You will be after I'm done with you, and to be honest I'd be lying if I told you that such an idea never appeared within my mind. The glorious euphoria that comes in breaking someone as strong as you. Someone who I consider my equal. I wonder how good will it feel. Mama, you're being such a sadist against Esdeath-chan. He looked away from the flames, turning his body around, and for first time upon this meeting, finally meeting face to face with his longtime friend now turned enemy, her blue eyes meeting his own, reuniting for one last time, before the inevitable would occur and force them apart. So I think we should get this started. After all, I don't want to get delayed here and get caught before I escape. This is your one shot to stop this rebellion before it arises. So impatient, I guess the time of talking is over. Understand this, I shall defeat you, and then I will break you, maybe then some sense can return to that hard head of yours. She shifted her stance, her sword now being held horizontally in her right hand, with its tip pointing the ground. As she took this stance, the temperature within the vicinity dropped several degrees. Let's get this execution started. She said, a small smile marring her face as she poised herself for combat. This is not execution, Naruto quickly corrected as he brought his blade to his side, holding it in reverse grip with his right hand as he slightly crouched down while leaning his body towards his opponent's direction. As she took this stance, heat emanated from his body, quickly counteracting the chilling temperature that was starting to take over. This is the birth of a revolution. All will freeze before me. Reduce all creation to ashes. The 2 simultaneously shouted. From their position the combatants swung their blades, both fully drawing upon the power granted to them by their respective Tigu. Hailstorm, Hailstorm, Raijin Jaka. Flowing blade like flame. In an instant, an army of large house-sized eternally cold icicles formed from the moisture lingering in the dry air, filling the night sky with no less than 100 large frosty spikes. But the swing of her sword, Esdeath commanded the ice elemental projectiles to shoot through the night skies, moving faster than the speed of any bullet as they flew towards their blonde target, intent of skewering him limb from limb before each icicle expanded and flash freeze him from existence. At the same time, the Naruto swung his blade. Not one to be bested so easily by a single attack, the blonde ex-general responded in kind by slashing his peerless katana towards the incoming barrage of icicles. A great inferno in the form of a large fiery river of intense flames was released from the sharp edge of his blade. A devastating conflagration of deadly flames that obliterates all that went against it, reducing them into ashes. Be they man, beast, or even God himself, all would burn in the hellfire of his blade. The harsh, never-melting ice met fierce unending flames, both attacks easily blanketing the night sky. The momentous exchange lasted for but a second of true peace and serenity, the calm to a storm. With the passing of that second, all semblance of peace was shattered as a cataclysmic explosion of a violent white light produced by ice and fire surrounded both Naruto and Esdeath as their attack tore and carved the very earth itself, destroying what little remained of the burning city. It was but the first of exchange of their battle. The very battle in which the earth itself cried despairingly as it was repeatedly wounded by the violent and apocalyptic clash of ice and fire that made the very battlefield itself uninhabitable for years to come. The clash between the two titans continued for hours on end until the break of dawn, when the victor was finally decided. As the sun rose from the faraway horizon, a lone person basked by the glory of the early morning sun walked away from the desolated battlefield, moving ever so slowly due to pain and exhaustion. Walking away and never looking back on the battlefield where the battered and wounded form of their worthy opponent rested. This battle would later be regarded by many historians as the start of the great and long-standing rivalry between the Ice Queen and the Fire King, but more importantly, that day will be forever remembered as the day which heralded the coming of a storm which will engulf the empire in chaos. The day that gave birth to the Great Revolution. The date was July 4 in the year 1024 of the imperial calendar. It has been 9 years since the defection of Naruto Uzumaki from the empire's military, and with the former general's defection came the rising of the Revolutionary Army, a group set on overthrowing the current regime, which was supported by the corrupt prime minister. The empire, arrogant with the unbound power that it has accumulated over the years that it has used to rule the lands for generations, merely scoffed at the uprisings, investing only the smallest amount of attention and resources to pacify the rebels that were barely even registered as threats. However, unknown to the empire, the revolution's apparent weakness was but a false sense of weakness instilled unto them by the rebellion, who opted to act behind the scenes, only battling and purposely retreating and losing against the empire every now and then, in order to make them think of their superiority. To boost their egos and make them see only though the surface and fail to see the truth that occurred underneath. For the revolution was far from dead or weak. In fact, it was moving underneath the empire's eyes, slowly building up their forces, preparing for the inevitable war between the two opposing factions. The revolution stuck to the shadows in waiting. Waiting for the opportune moment to strike. Waiting for the leaders to map out their plans. Waiting for the soldiers to get stronger and wiser. Waiting for more generals to defect from the empire. Waiting for the tegu they have amassed to find their users. So for now the revolution lurked within the shadows in waiting, not knowing that the time for waiting was drawing to a close. The time of change was upon them. Will the ever-powerful empire continue its rule, or will the rebellion triumph and usurp the corrupt throne? Which side will remain standing in the end? Sadly, only time will tell. Revolution. City of Hakuin Shopping District. Hakuin was but one of the many cities within the territory of the ever-powerful and ever-glorious empire. Its streets were always busy, buzzing with life and festivities even through the late hours of the evening, as men and women alike lived their lives in the great comfort provided to them by the city. It was a really beautiful city. Every part barring the slums were good to the eyes. Large and beautiful architecture lined the streets. In all intents and purpose, it only actually lose in terms of aesthetic appeal to the very capital itself. But like most things within this empire, the beauty projected by the city was naught but a facade that hid the ugliness that existed within the depths of the city. Corruption ran rampant within the city's veins. The nobles and politicians that resided in Hakuin were allowed free rein on the city. They were allowed to pick people of the streets and enslave them in a whim. There were a few who even rode their horses down to the slums, using the creatures' hooves to smash down and crack open the skulls of unfortunate children who were playing in the streets. So long as they had money and connections, these people were exempt from being justice, and thus were never guilty and punished for such heinous crimes like murder, rape, and even in some cases torture. The defense forces tasked to protect the city knew full well of what was happening, but they chose to turn a blind eye towards the inhumanity that occurs on a daily basis, so long as their pockets were lined with gold and notes, courtesy of the rich pockets of the noble. But that was not all. The guards were also bribed by the gangs that occupied the slums and the shadier districts of the city. Those bribes allowed for the survival of a well-known and well-connected prostitution rings, which forcefully enslaved women, and drug cartels, which deluded the minds of men, both of which spanned out through most of the empire, and if one were to look intently upon them, it all lead back to the man that stood behind the emperor's throne. Such an ugly, yet beautiful city. Within the roads of this very dual-faced city, a certain man by the name of Naruto Uzumaki walked. He stood at an impressive 6'1", making him slightly taller than most of the merchant, soldiers, and generally many people that he passed by, most of whom ignored him for the sake of their own businesses. The ex-general of the empire has changed over the years. Gone was the teenage off-worlder, and in his place stood a man who fought through many battles over the past 9 years. The only thing that remained the same for him was his blonde hair, which was still as wild and spiky as ever, but other than that almost everything else was different for the man. His previous clothing was long gone and replaced by a new set, which was consisted of a bright orange kimono top that parted in the middle, showing off his toned chest with a symbol of two black fiery wings in between his collarbones, and the necklace of a pitch black bird in flight that hung from his neck. Atop the kimono top he wore a light blue short-sleeved haori with white flames along its hem and the kanji of fire in the back. Wrapped around his left shoulder was a hideate with blue cloth and the words Hai no Ishi, Will of Fire, engraved upon its steel piece. He also wore black Hakama pants and a pair of black open-toed sandals. His pants were kept up by a black belt which was tied to his waist, where several pouches were held. To finish it off, he was also equipped with an ensemble of items such as a black face mask, which stopped just above the bridge of his nose, reminiscent to that of his old teacher, a long red scarf resting around his neck, much like his self-proclaimed rival and student wore. And last but not the least, an orange cane that he held in his right hand. The very same cane that he was tapping on the ground as he walked through the streets of the city with both of his eyes shut close, relying only on his other senses and the guiding presence of his cane to lead him through the darkness. Naruto sighed as his blonde hair bristled ever so lightly against a sudden breeze that blew by the crowded streets of the shopping district. Ever had one of those long days? You know, those days where it isn't even over, but all you can think of is going home, maybe take a long relaxing shower or have a beer or two before crashing on your bed for a few hours in order to stave off all the stress and frustrations you've had for that particularly long and crappy day, knowing full well that the next day would just be as bad as that day or even worse. Naruto was having one of those days. A day where even the normally bright and cheerful blonde couldn't help but scowl so openly. Actually, the only thing that hid his scowl from the world was the black face mask reminiscent of his old sensei that he wore to hide the bottom part of his face. As to why he was hiding the bottom part of his face in the first place. Well, the blonde was a wanted criminal, noteworthy of being on the top of Empire's most wanted list for 9 years running. Openly starting a rebellion and pointing out the flaws of the current regime did tend to bear those kind of consequences. That was actually another reason for his sour mood. Rebellion business with regards to one of his acquaintances in the city. She was a very nice girl who served as a part of his spy network for the rebels, risking her life for information that may help change that damned many lives, including her own. Sadly, she was mercilessly killed by a group of drugged-up gangsters who broke into her house and tried to rape her. That did not bode well for Naruto, not at all. The rebel lightly tapped a cane held in his right hand, using it to guide him along the way as he walked down the bustling streets lined with peddlers, merchants, and a variety of people from different classes that were there to shop. He continued walking on as he tapped his cane, only stopping when his sharp ears picked up on panicked whispers about several fires all over the city. The house in the higher class part of the city, along with the warehouse districts where some gangs were known to use as bases, were on fire. Just the sound, the news already spreading around like wildfire, was enough to bring a small smile to his clothed face. It was a momentary comfort amidst a really bad day. The good person died that day, and the best he could do for her was give her a semblance of closure after burying her body. Not that he was admitting to having any part of the fire over the warehouse districts which burned down a few gangs, mind you. It was just by chance that all their bases caught fire while he in the city. It was purely coincidental that all 7 bases scattered around the warehouse districts and even the house of their boss in the noble district caught fire. Yep, it was definitely by chance, and by no means was he involved. He was completely innocent until proven guilty. He shook his head and started walking once more after realizing that he was standing in the middle of the road for far too long. With a practiced number of footsteps and taps with his cane from a person who walked these streets many a times over the past few years, Naruto eventually reached a rather wide indoor and outdoor cafe located in the middle of the shopping district. Cafe Shiki, or so it was called, one of the more well-known establishments in the city which catered to many types of people, most of which went there due to the shop's high-quality pastries and their wide variety of relaxing tea and coffee. After a long and hard day, he just hoped some of their tea in his system would help him relax and unwind. Naruto knew from memory that several tables were readily available in the outside portion of the shop. Normally he would just grab a seat and a waiter would soon approach him to take his order. So with that in mind, he started walking towards the tables. However, before he could even pick a seat from the myriad of tables placed all over the area, the sound's light tapping of footsteps moving towards his direction caught Naruto's attention, prompting him to turn towards the direction of the sound stopped only a few steps away from his body. "Good afternoon, mister. Can I help you with anything?" A sweet, welcoming, and almost melodic feminine voice reached his ears. He turned his head towards the direction of the voice, temptation of who could have such a sweet voice overwhelming him and forcing him to slightly open his left eye and release a small pulse of chakra. As the blonde fugitive quickly took in the blurred image of the speaker before closing his eyes once more. His eyes and the pulse of chakra gave him the image that the speaker was a beautiful young woman wearing a frilly uniform reminiscent of a maid. She had light-toned skin close to ivory white that contrasted her long pitch-black raven-colored hair, which was styled into a high ponytail. In his honest opinion, she was quite beautiful, and the kind smile she wore in her face greatly increased her appeal. "Afternoon," he replied, giving a curt nod of the head to the young woman who was kind enough to approach him and welcome him to their establishment. "Well, I was wondering if it wouldn't be much trouble. Can you point me to an open seat?" "Understood, I don't mean to be rude or anything, but do you need any assistance?" she asked with a hint of real concern towards his well-being. Her words actually brought a smile to his face to show such consideration to a total stranger. That was rare to come by in this dire times. "No, I'm fine, just walk towards my table and I'll follow you, no need to hold my hand." Since Naruto lifted the orange cane that he carried around in his right hand. "I have this to help me get around." "Then please follow me to your table." "So are you new here, Ms. Bakari?" "And yes. The manager hired me to be a waitress here a few weeks ago. I was lucky enough to get a job here despite the recession." "How's it been treating you?" "Well, working here is really nice. The workload isn't that hard, the owner is nice, my co-workers are equally as nice. The pay is pretty good and it's a perfect place to work in. I'm really lucky to have gotten this job despite the recession. If I didn't, then there would be no way I could support my sister without taking on more unsavory professions." Naruto nodded with a hint of understanding. He knew far too well where a cute girl like her who needed some money tended to end up in, and by God, it wasn't pretty. "That's really admirable. It's really rare nowadays for kids your age to be so nice and responsible. Honestly, if I was like you when I was your age, then maybe, just maybe, my life would have been better and not as screwed up as it is now. Well, I think that as long as you're still alive and doing your best every day, then there's always a chance that life will eventually get better, or in your case unscrew itself. So don't ever give up and keep fighting on. Okay, mister? As long as we keep working for it, a better future will eventually come. Here's your sit, sir." "Thank you for leading me to this table and for the wise words." "No problems, mister. I'm just happy to help. You know, this world need more kind people like you in it. I think that there are many people like me, they just don't know it yet." There was a momentary pause in the part of the waitress, as if she took a second to collect her thoughts. "If you wouldn't mind, may I take your order?" "Oh, almost forgot about that, haha." He scratched the back of his self in a rather goofy manner reminiscent of his old self. "Green tea with a side of red bean cake. It'll be ready in a few minutes." "No worries, I can wait." Revolution. Cafe Shiki. Inside the cafe. A smiling man in his early to mid-20s lightly tapped his fingers across a table as he sat in a customer's seat beside a rather long pole-like object wrapped in white cloth within the interior portion of the cafe, sitting just beside a window that allowed him to gaze through the outer part of the establishment. He had blue hair which was swept back and eerie red eyes hidden in narrow slits, both of which stood out as those features perfectly contrasted his rather pale complexion. He was also a bit on the thin side, as his clothes consisting of a dark blue long-sleeved dress shirt with the insignia off skulls running through its hems and a pair of black pants with small tiers on its knees, and the end of the pants were rather baggy, loose-fitting for his thin frame. Though there was a reason the man was a bit on the malnourished, and that was simply due to the fact that he hasn't eaten anything as of late. He was hungry, really starving, absolutely famished. He wanted something to eat, something to put in his mouth and chew on, savoring its taste until he swallowed it. Just the thought made him even hungrier than he already was. That was part of the reason why he was here in this cafe in the first place. It was a work-related reason, and if he did a good job, he'll never get hungry ever again. No more starving from days on end, like the ones he experienced when he was growing up in one of the poverty-stricken villages far away from the capital. Yes, just kill one man and he'll never be hungry again. That was the fat guy told him. Just kill the blonde man sitting outside the restaurant and he'll get to eat as much as he could for as long as he wanted. That was how it always was. They show him a picture, he kills them, and afterwards he was allowed to eat. That's always how it's been done, that's always how it will be done. No questions asked. He didn't care who killed, he didn't care if they were man or woman, adult or child, he just tore them apart without question. All for the sake of being allowed to appease his hunger. But that was not the case right now. He was hungry, really hungry, hungry before he could even take out his target. That was not good, definitely not good at all. If he was hungry, he couldn't concentrate, and if he couldn't concentrate, then he couldn't kill properly, and if he didn't kill the man, then he wouldn't be rewarded with an eternity of free meals. His light tapping across the table grew a bit louder and harsher as he contemplated on what to do. He can't go outside now, not when he was this hungry. He needed something, a snack or an appetizer to momentarily fill him before he sank his teeth into the main course and the dessert. I don't know why the fat man wants some blonde guy dead, but this is going to be the easiest job I've gotten in a long while. But even if it's an easy job, I might screw up if I'm hungry, and if I screw up I can say bye-bye to the rewards. Ugh, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? His body drooped towards the table, his eyes were rather blank as he continued tapping his fingers to no end. Hello sir, is there anything I can help you with? The tapping of his fingers stopped. His head moving towards the direction of the voice. It was that girl, the black-haired girl who served his target some tea and cakes or something. She was really pretty, just looking at her face was enough to elicit a small blush from him. Burgle. Damn, he was really starving, no energy, no power, it sucks so bad, and his stomach was screaming at him. Wait here for a second, okay? The waitress said as she quickly walked back to the counter and after a few seconds returned with a fresh cup of warm tea that she placed atop his table. You look a bit troubled, so here a bit of tea to calm your nerves, it's on the house. Just don't tell the manager, okay? Thank you. He replied as he took the steaming cup of tea and took a sip. It was really good, but not enough to sate his hunger. With his eternally grinning visage he proceeded to close his eyes until they were nothing more than vertical slits before he opened his mouth and stared to speak. I'm a bit hungry, really hungry, like super hungry. I was wondering if you sell anything with meat in here. Sorry sir, but we don't sell meat, only tea, coffee, and pastries. If you want something meaty to eat, then you can try going to the steakhouse a few blocks to the south of here, since they sell really good meats. She replied kindly, eliciting another blush from the blue-haired man. She was a really nice girl, it was rare to see girls like her nowadays. Really rare bunch, those nice girls, since most of them now were either too mean, too sour, or too soulless. Burgle. He really needed to eat something soon or he'll turn insane. I'll keep that in mind. Just trust me on it, okay? She responded cheerfully before she asked. Is there anything I can get for you? He tapped his fingers across the table for a few seconds, his mind contemplating on his next move. His target was still outside drinking tea or something like that, it wasn't like the man was going away anytime soon. So he had about give or take 5 to 10 minutes to grab a bite before moving on to killing his one-way ticket to a lifetime of no hunger. Burgle. It was decided he had to eat something. I'm planning ordering something, but I'm sorry about that, but I'm really having trouble seeing. Eye problems every now and then after an accident. It's really a problematic since I'm not used to it yet. He pointed at his slitted eyes. If you don't mind, can you please point me to the restroom? I kinda need to use it before I order a snack. I would be happy too. She responded with a kind smile on her face. Do you want me to hold your hand and lead you along the way, or will you be comfortable in just following my voice? If it wouldn't be a problem, could you please walk me there? It won't be. I'm glad I could help. She extended her hand and carefully grabbed the blue-haired man's own. Slowly but surely she helped him up and guided him towards the restroom, which was located near the back of the store, far from the kitchen and the counter, while passing several stalls where the other customers sat. Internally the man smiled, his target wasn't going anywhere soon, so he might as well indulge himself in a meal before his hunt. Yes, such a lovely meal, an appetizer before the main course. The restroom is over here. The girl said softly as she placed her hand upon the wooden door that led to the male restroom and with a small push, opened it to allow the blue-haired man to enter. She really was such a nice girl, and nice girls needed to be rewarded. It was the least he could do for such a kind person. Thank you very much. He said as the girl started walking away. Oh wait just a second, he placed his hand on his pocket, carefully fishing for something, as the girl stopped walking and turned back at him for but a moment. Just a small reward for your services. He said as his hands finally found what they were looking for. Oh, there's no need for that sir. I'm just happy to help. She really was a kind girl. Burgle. It would be bad not to reward her for her services. For those times when he was good, every time he did as they said he was always rewarded. They gave him food, they allowed him eat to his heart's desire. So it was just right that she as well was rewarded for being so kind, right? But how do you reward someone for their kindness? The man furrowed his eyebrows in thought. Shikiho did say something about rewards. The perfect one to give a woman. What was it again? He spent a few seconds in internal contemplation until he slowly recalled the advice of one of his comrades, recalling how to reward women. In an instant a light bulb appeared atop his head as he reached an epiphany. Yes, that would be the perfect reward. He smiled as his eyes slowly opened, revealing blood-red crimson-colored eyes to the world. No, I insist. As those words left his mouth, the man's hand flashed from existence as he made his move. A handkerchief was placed upon the waitress's lips faster than she could ever comprehend. Before she could even struggle, she was pushed into the washroom, its door quickly locked by the blue-haired man. With speed far surpassing that of a normal man, the blue-haired assassin pushed the now panicking and struggling waitress into one of the stalls, his larger body pushing against her in order to prevent her from struggling. The white handkerchief in one hand was still covering her mouth, preventing it from releasing shouts for help, while the other hand moved swiftly as it began taking off the waitress's uniform, quickly working to take off every piece of clothing until the woman was left in only her undergarments, a two-piece of silk white panties and bras. Burgle. The man licked his lips as he looked at the woman. The fear and panic in her features only increasing his hunger. "Don't worry," his said, voice surprisingly soothing despite of the situation in hand. "My friend told me this was how to reward girls. She said that all girls like this. I don't really know what she means, but you were so kind and all. It was just unfair that you went unrewarded. You know." His free hand moved down toward her panties, moving ever so slowly as he continued pushing downwards, easily overpowering the now crying woman. However, the man's hand suddenly stopped before it could reach the last piece of cloth which protected her chastity, and instead his head moved towards her shoulder, his lips tracing kisses along her limbs. In doing so giving the woman a small sense of hope. Sadly it was short-lived, as the hope soon faded away, in its place bloomed despair and pain. A chunk of her shoulder was now missing, muscles and nerves torn off revealing the bone beneath. The missing piece of flesh now within the assassin's bloodied maw. He slowly chewed down on the piece with an almost organismic expression in his insanity-filled face. With a now bloodied smile on his face he looked down on the crying woman, her struggling increased, he could see that she was slowly running out of energy. Soon she would be nothing more than a tasty meal waiting in his stomach, but before that he must not forget to reward her. With that in mind his free hand finally took off the waitress's underwear, a firm plan already set in his mind. Yes, it was only proper to reward her for her kindness. What better reward was there than to allow her to be feasted upon by him? Soft, smooth, flawless, and tender-skinned, such a delectable kind woman, in itself a rare delicacy by this day and age. Yes, she will definitely be a fine appetizer to suit his tastes. The itadakamasu, I humbly receive. Revolution. Cafe Shiki streets near the cafe. The cloaked woman was silently walking along the streets of Hakuin. Now the reasons for a person to wear a cloak with its hood up in broad daylight in the late hours of the afternoon can be generally narrowed down to two specific reasons. A. It was a really hot day and the sun was a bit too overbearing to the skin, thus the need the cloak and hood to protect oneself from the sun. Or B. The person was using said hood and cloak to hide themselves from someone, as the cloak effectively hides their features and makes them somewhat a bit inconspicuous to the eyes of many. The woman walking down the street definitely belonged to the later category. Her cloak served as an effective equipment to carefully hide certain features that she possessed, which tends to stand out from the norm. Such as the fact that she had white hair, a type of hair color that only a handful of people in the entire empire had. Then there was that distinct eye patch in her right eye, though not uncommon when combined with the metallic prosthetic right arm that she possesses, and her unique hair color, it was painfully easy to discern her identity. After all, it wasn't that hard to forget the name of the person listed in the Empire's most wanted list over the last few years. The traitorous ex-general of the army, current member and general of the Revolutionary Army, and the leader of the current incarnation of the assassination group known as Night Raid, Nenda. As for the reason why a woman of such infamy was walking around in broad daylight in one of the larger cities of the Empire, well, it all boiled down to the fact that she needed information, and information is power, or was it knowledge? She wasn't really sure, but she had no plans on pondering on it any further. Be it knowledge or information, she was in dire need of both, intelligence on the current ongoings within the revolution and the capital. For that reason she came to the city. Sadly, the informant stationed in the city, a kind woman by the name of Nathalia, was brutally killed by a local gang. Tragic really, if the times weren't so dire she would have no doubt spend a day or two in mourning for the loss of such a good person, but alas, she was only allowed a few minutes to mourn, as for with each passing moment, more and more lives were lost, either fighting for their cause or at the cruel hands of the Empire. Yes, a good woman died today, but many more will follow along her footsteps, dying for the cause that they all fought for. After all, the world can't change without a few people dying along the way. In hindsight, that specific line of though came out as rather cold, jaded, and pessimistic, but even the softest and warmest of all hearts and souls must harden in these times of strife. She has lost too many people she cared for, be they friends, close comrades, subordinates, fellow revolutionaries. Her path was already painted with blood and engraved with corpses. It was far too late to back off from the path she has chosen. Everyone in the rebellion was willing to lay down their own lives for the cause they all fight for. To overthrow the prime minister and root out the corruption that plagues the empire. To prevent the great tragedies and monstrosities that all of them in the revolution has come to witness in the hands of the empire. For the sake of the future of both this country and its people. That was why she fought, that and was why she will continue fighting until her dying breath. For that she will move forward, never looking back and getting trapped on the what could have been or what would have been. Her regrets for her decisions or indecision already buried far beneath her heart, only looking back at them to remind herself of why she must continue. Truth be told, she was not the only one who took that approach in life. Most of the high-ranking members of the revolution chilled their hearts for the sake of their goal. Though there was one person she knew who wasn't completely cold-hearted despite the fact that he suffered even greater tragedies than she or anyone else in the revolution could comprehend. Yes, despite all of those tragedies, the man was far from a cold-hearted cynic who looked at the world through jade-colored glasses. He was kind, caring, compassionate. He radiated a radiant warmth and glow that drew people towards him. It was as if he was a great fire attracting people towards him. Though his flames did not harm them, but rather he nurtured them, protected them, comforted them, he lighted up the path that allowed many to follow. He was strong. Strong enough to not sacrifice his own humanity while waging war against the world. She wasn't strong like him, she was weak, and because of her weakness, she couldn't be there to personally support him. Perhaps once upon a time she could have been one of his closest allies, a person who stood by his side and guarded his back from enemies, but any chances of that happening stopped when she defected from the Empire and fell prey to the cruelty of Esdeath. A tired sigh escaped her lips as her left hand trailed along the metal prosthetic which replaced her right limb that was sliced off by the sadistic general. I can't really fight beside you anymore. I can't even fight my best these days. If she really had one true regret, it would be that, the fact that she couldn't fight to the best of her capabilities anymore. It actually pained her that she has no choice but to watch and wait from behind the scenes as her subordinates moved along the night and carried out their assassinations, purposely endangering themselves while she waited in the safety of their base. It was such an unpleasant feeling. Another sigh escaped her lips as she recalled the group she now looked after. I wonder how he's doing. She muttered, feeling a mix of nostalgia and concern over the blonde revolutionary who she has not seen in the past few years. The only correspondence between them were either letters sent to each other regarding matters over the revolution or him hiring her group to work with him in certain missions. In fact, the last time she personally saw him was when he handed her the leadership of a group that he created called Night Raid. It was a group tainted with the blood of many. She could still clearly remember that day as if it was yesterday. A man standing atop a hill of corpses over a field of fire and ice. Bodies of both allies and enemies lay strewn all over the battlefield, tainting the entire landscape crimson with blood. The man stood there motionless like a rock, a bloody sword in hand as he gazed upon the dark cloud that marred the heavens, while two streams of red flowed out of his eyes. It was as if he was crying out blood. From the lonely spot atop the hill of corpses, he gazed down upon her. His warm yet sad-filled blue eyes robbed her of her breath. Those cold orbs that gazed and judged her very existence, it was as if his eyes pierced through all of her defenses, leaving him to see nothing but the truth and essence of her very being. It was the most frightening thing she had ever experienced. Though the fear soon faded away, surprise soon replacing it as the man handed unto her the reins of the group he created before promptly leaving her behind, walking away from the gory battlefield with nothing but his sword in hand. That was the day that the leadership to the infamous assassination group known throughout the Empire as Night Raid was transferred to her. A day that she would forever remember till death. She shook her head as she noticed that her thoughts had trailed off once more. There was no longer any need to stay in the city. She had to leave and return to her base before anyone recognized and called the defense forces on her. Oh wait, that already happened earlier that day. After she left her former informant's house, she had a rather nasty encounter with several gang members running around the place like chickens with their heads cut off. For some reason they thought that she was responsible for starting the fires all over the city. Cue in her kicking their asses, her hood falling down for a moment, and a person passing by seeing and recognizing her before running away, probably for the sake calling the military on her. Safe to say she ran away as soon as she could from the scene, only slowing down and moving along the crowd since a few minutes back. That was why she was walking down the street. Walking towards the nearest exit as fast as she could to escape capture. However, as she walked down this road, a small breeze passed blew over, her hood was slightly pulled back for less than a second, but that was enough for her left eye to catch a speck of blonde sitting in a nearby cafe. Before she even noticed it, she stopped walking, her body moving almost mechanically as she turned towards the cafe. It couldn't be. Even he wouldn't be so brazen enough to sit in a cafe in the middle of the public, with only a face mask hiding his features when his face is on every wanted poster across the Empire. For God's sake, he was even more wanted than her, and she had to stalk about the day wearing a cloak to hide her face from the public. He won't. She blinked, putting her tirade of thoughts to a side as she came to a halting realization. This was Naruto she was talking about, the Naruto Uzumaki, ex-general of the Empire, who had a big enough pair of balls to actually openly declare a rebellion on the Empire after defeating Esdeath in combat. Of course he'd had the balls to do something as stupid and outrageous as this. Though that left a question floating in her mind, what the hell was he doing here? Why was he here on the very day that the city was on high alert for because of the fires around the city and most likely her own presence, which was reported by that damned passerby that she didn't knock out? Wait. Naruto was in the city. A member of the Revolution spy network was killed by the gangsters. There were fires around the city, most notably around the gang-inhabited districts. He wouldn't. She said as her head slowly connected the dots, which lead her to the quick conclusion that Naruto was the one responsible for the fires. For the third time that day a sigh escaped her lips. Of course he would, she shook her head as she started walking towards the outdoor cafe while shaking her head. Only you, Naruto, only you. As she walked closer to the cafe, she caught the attention of a waiter, this one a rather rotund man with hazelnut-colored hair. A brief exchange of words occurred between them as she quickly ordered a cup of black coffee while simultaneously telling the man to bring her order to the table where the blonde man sat. After which she continued walking, knowing full well that he was already aware of her presence, but nonetheless she decided to make herself known by taking and sitting down on the chair adjacent to her blonde friend, who was still sipping tea without a care in the world. For a moment she thought she saw his eyebrow twitch for just a bit in frustration, but it came so fast that she thought it was a trick of the eye. Maybe she was bothering him. Nah, knowing him he'd appreciate the company. Acting almost on reflex, she quickly pulled out a packet of cigarettes from her pockets and with a light tap a single stick came out of the pack before it was placed in between her waiting mouth. With the cancer stick in its place, she turned her attention back to her fellow revolutionary, completely forgetting the fact that perchance there was some defense forces members were probably hot on her heels. After all, why would she be afraid when the revolutionary's gun no Kira army killer was sitting close by? Can I borrow a lighter? Revolution. F.A. Shiki Naruto's table. If it wasn't clear already, the main reason Naruto came to this rather well-known cafe was in order to get something to eat and drink so that he could relax for just a bit before going on with the rest of his day. As a matter of fact, it would be a bit of a lie if he were to say that his stress levels didn't go down to a certain extent. The waitress was really nice, the tea was as good as always, and the red bean cake just had the right amount of chewiness and sweetness into that made eating it all the more better to eat. Actually, the only real problem he was having at the moment was the fact that his sharp hearing could pick up on a conversation occurring on a nearby table. Now, he didn't mean to be rude and eavesdrop or anything, but he was finding it inherently difficult to turn a blind eye, or in this case hear over what he was hearing from a nearby table, where two rich and fat businessmen talked about their nightly activities within a large mansion in the Nobles district with a large star-like ornament in the roof. Nightly activities which involved non-consensual coitus with a group of underage kids of both genders, along with the subsequent breaking, killing, tossing away, and feeding of their victims' bodies to several hungry pigs. It took all his will to not burn them where they sat. Must not burn. Must not burn. Must not burn. The chant was repeated over and over within the revolutionary's mind as he forced himself to not stand up and start a large fire over the table where the two men sat. After all, it would be bad business for this cafe if a large fire spontaneously engulfed a nearby table, reducing two people in ashes in a span of a few seconds. Add to the fact that if the military and by extension the Prime Minister found out that they catered to criminals, then there was a good chance that not only would the shop get closed down, but also give everyone working in the establishment a one-way ticket trip to the nearest prison, where they will suffer for all eternity. And quite frankly, he can't have that happening since he really liked this place and would often visit it during his trips to the city. So for now he did his best to calm himself down and not do something that would be considered extremely reckless. Ignore them for now, they'll get their just desserts after he left this place. Just a quick trip to that palace in the Nobles district. It wouldn't even put a dent in his schedule. But for now he'll wait and put his attention elsewhere, specifically the person who just sat across from him in his table. Can I borrow a lighter? A familiar voice accompanied by a similarly familiar presence reached his ears, causing a small smile to tug the side of his lips. This could certainly serve as a great distraction towards his increasing pyromaniac tendencies. I don't have a lighter. Naruto replied with a cheeky grin on his face as a pulse of chakra escaped his body, mapping out the nearby vicinity and thus confirming that it was in fact his old friend Nenda who sat before him. Then can you help me light this up for me? Do I look like a lighter? No, but you look like you have, dare I say, a very fiery personality. You've been waiting for a long time to use that one, haven't you? Naruto replied in an obvious deadpan as he extended his left index finger towards the cigarette tucked in the white-haired woman's mouth. In an instant the cancer stick was suddenly light up, enabling her to take a few puffs out of the stick. And stop smoking, it's bad for your health and it'll kill you one day. He rebuffed her for her habits, not that he had the right to tell on her, since he did have a small addiction of ramen and sake. The ex-general took a long drag, exhaling a plume of smoke as a waiter handed her a cup of black coffee. She waited for the waiter to leave the two of them alone before replying to the blonde rebel. "A few years off my life for smoking isn't that much, after all people in our business tend to not live long lives. We don't even get the pleasure of retiring and living the rest of our days in peace." But isn't that what we're fighting for? So one day those that would follow us will get to experience a future free of the evil that plagues our society today. She reached for her cup of coffee and brought it up towards Naruto. "To a better future." Without even opening his eyes, the blonde raised his own cup filled with tea towards Nenda. "To a better future," he replied as the two of them clicked their glasses, the low tinging sound only echoing between them before it was lost within the seas of sound present in the bustling cafe. "I would say it's nice to see you again after a really long time, but I'm tired as hell right now, and you know the deal with the eyes." Naruto pointed to his eyes as if to make a point. Nenda took a sip of her coffee, instantly finding its bitterness much to her liking. "Why do you always keep your eyes closed? It's not like you're 100% blind, right? Or did I miss something over this last year? You can say I'm sharpening my other senses for when the time finally comes when my eyes give out. It's really better get used to the darkness now than be a bumbling clumsy idiot a few years down the line. That and people tend to underestimate me when they think I'm blind." "How did that go for them?" Naruto grinned. "Last mistake they ever made in their life." "Good to hear. So any reason why you're here right now?" Naruto asked with bluntness that could only be attributed to his past self, which lacked any semblance of tact. "I just happened to see a familiar face in the crowd. It's not every day we see the ever-famous Fire King in broad daylight. I just came here for a quick hello and to basically ask you what's up." Naruto pointed up to the cloudy horizon as he took a sip out of his own drink. "The sky. Don't act all smart like that, it's way out of character for you. Are you calling me stupid?" "No, you called yourself stupid." Naruto rolled his eyes. "Sometimes I really hate you." She chuckled dryly as she recalled a distant memory. "The feeling is somewhat mutual. After all, you were a pain in the ass when I was still part of the army and you were leading your revolution, causing all kinds of hell for all of us." Naruto quickly waved his left hand in a denying manner. "I'm still insisting that I'm not the leader of the Revolutionary Army. I'm just the leader of its intelligence division. Intelligence division. You know, spy network and all." "Spy network," he repeated for emphasis, not that his companion bought it as she was already rolling her eyes by then. "For Kami's sake, I'm a fighter, an assassin, and a very sexy man, not a leader or a strategist. It would be better for me to be fighting in the front lines or to be working in the shadows. Despite what you say, you're the leader of the Revolutionary Army in all but name. I can guarantee that most of the people who joined our cause was one way or another affected or inspired by your actions. You're a charismatic bastard, you know, and that's a good trait for any leader to have. The sexiness helps too, bonus points actually." Naruto sighed in an exasperated manner as he ran his left hand through his hair. "Years ago, I would have jumped in an opportunity to be a leader. To be acknowledged by so many people, but times have changed and I know for a fact that I'm severely lacking in certain aspects to be considered a leader. Yes, I admit that I'm a charismatic bastard, a super hyper mega ultra ninja with connections, and a certified badass ass kicker. But I suck when it comes to the more important things like wartime strategies and tactics, personnel allotment, funds management. You know, those things we need for our revolution to keep running. Yup, terrible at them. Even back when I was in the Empire I had Esdeath take care of those things, while I stuck to the ass kicking and body burning. Every leader has their own faults. No one is perfect. That's why you have friends and allies to help you. Though no matter what you say, you're still considered by many as the figurehead of the revolution. The hero to the revolution, the person who stood up to the oppression of the empire. Even the neighboring country sees you as such. Well, the empire sees you as." She paused for a moment for the sake of taking a hit from her cancer stick. "Well, you know. The greatest traitor and the devil of the empire." Naruto replied with a humorless chuckle as he took a sip of his slowly cooling tea. "Heck, they even tell kids stories about me coming out in the night to kill them. Assholes." "Speaking of the empire, what are you doing this close to the capital?" "Scouting. I was actually there a few hours ago trying to see if I can successfully infiltrate the castle and take out the root of all our problems. The Prime Minister who controls the Emperor, who in turn controls the entire empire from behind the scenes." Her gaze hardened as she looked at Naruto. "How did that go for you?" she asked as she focused all of her attention to the blonde. "Bad," he admitted without dilly-dallying. "As much as I want to go in there guns a-blazing and take out that son of a bitch, we both know it won't really do anything for us unless 1. We take out all of his supporters, and both of us know that there's a whole lot of them. 2. Secure the king and convince him to support our cause to take out the corruption that has tainted his kingdom. And last but most importantly, gain the support of the majority of the public by either convincing them or giving them that one last push to finally make them act and rise against the oppression of this empire. As things are now, your last point is close to impossible to achieve. Even the slightest sings of rebellions and uprisings are pacified by the empire. It's a miracle that ours have been going on for this long without being put down, though I guess we have you to thank for that. It was your idea to stick to the shadows after all. We just got lucky, I got lucky. Even so, without you, the Revolutionary Army would probably be in an even worse condition. You're right, if only we got more support, then there wouldn't be any more need for the cloak and dagger stuff that we do all the time. With more people we could finally bring the fight to them. Such a shame that it won't happen anytime soon. Not when people are afraid of the empire. The people shouldn't be afraid of the empire. The empire should be afraid of its people. Our rebellion is a symbol. Symbols are given power by the people. Alone a symbol is meaningless, but with enough people, then even our rebellion can change the world. I hope that's possible, but every time I see the world change it's been for the worse. We're already close to the bottom of the barrel, what's left to go to but up? We just need to continue on working to make this world change for the best. Like we said earlier, for the sake of the future, right? Nenda actually smiled for the first time in the entire conversation after hearing his response. Such optimism despite these dire times. And that's why the army thinks of you as its leader. It's because you're a beacon of hope in the midst of all this darkness in the world. There are more people out there suited to be the leader than I am. I already told you, I'm a fighter and an assassin, not a leader and a strategist. She sighed, what a stubborn man. We got a bit sidetracked there. How are the castle's defenses? They're tight, in fact it's improved since the time I left the army. First of all, no one new is allowed inside the castle, only their trusted staff are allowed to roam its large walls. There's also a series of code words given to everyone within the castle. The code changes every 2 hours. Who gives out the codes? I have no idea. Apparently everyone inside the castle is expected to know who gives it out, and those who aren't given a code or gets the code wrong are killed on the spot. To make things worse, they have a sensory tegu somewhere in the castle. Its sole purpose is to detect a single presence, my presence. If I'm anywhere near the castle, even near its wall, an alarm rings inside the castle and boom bam, next thing you know the entire army is after me again. I swear to Kami, those guys are overly paranoid about me. It's not like I'll just waltz up there and start killing people while screaming my name like good old Leroy from Esdeath's division, Kami rest his soul. He was actually tempted to do that, but that would put him against several generals, one of which would certainly be Grand General Budu, and that was a fight he was not looking forward to having anytime soon. So as of now, assassinating the Prime Minister and his castle is close to impossible. He nodded in response, prompting her to move to another question, this one related to the reason she was in this city in the first place. Do you have any more information for me? Work-related or personal? Let's start with work-related. Business before pleasure and all. We're pulling back our forces that are stationed along the northern border. A single brow rose in curiosity as she asked, any reason for that? Do you know the hero of the northern tribes? Are you talking about Numasika? The prince of the North tribe, the god of spear who could take out high-class danger beast with ease, the very same person who was said to never have lost a battle in his entire life. Well, I tried to talk to him a few weeks ago in hopes of forming an alliance between their tribes and the Revolutionary Army, but sadly his own arrogance and confidence for his abilities blinded him from the incoming sadistic storm that awaited him in the horizon. Stupid arrogant prick. If an alliance was formed between them and our revolution, then we would have made a great leeway in creating a solid force to stand against the empire, but no head had to say he had it under the wraps. Is this about the expedition force being sent to pacify the northern tribes? From what I've heard, the military is just starting to gather their forces, but from the look of things the only person suitable enough to lead an army through the cold terrain of the north is Esdeath. In a few months or even weeks, depending on how fast her army gets there, the hero along with his tribe will be no more. He calmly took a sip of his tea before replying. His tribe is going to get pillaged, burned, raped, and destroyed by the military, while the hero himself is probably going to be Esdeath's bitch for the remainder of his life, and if he's lucky enough she'll kill him afterwards, and if not, well, there are fates worse than death. She involuntarily shivered as her left hand moved towards her prosthetic arm, firmly grasping on it as she recalled Esdeath slicing it off. I know what you mean, she is really scary. General Esdeath, that is. During my time serving with her in the skirmishes of the north and south, I saw firsthand the cruelty she is capable of against her opponents. With her it's really preferable to just get killed in battle than survive and get tortured till death. You haven't seen the half of it. I've served beside her from the day I was conscripted into the empire. Whatever you've seen, I probably saw something 100 times worse. Seriously, why did such a beautiful girl like her had to be such a hardcore sadist? Kami, that is just cruel. Oh, so you have the hots for her? She smugly pointed out as if confirming an earlier suspicion that she had. Shut up. Esdeath is hot and everyone knows it. Wouldn't she be cold because of her Tigu? Lame pun. Naruto replied dryly as he gave Nenda a deadpan look. So what will you be doing now? She asked, quickly changing the topic of the conversation to hide her embarrassment over her rather unfunny joke. I need to lay low for a bit since I got the inkling feeling that if I stayed out in the open, then I would have yet another unfortunate encounter with our mutual acquaintance, which again will lead to another fight that will again cause massive property damage. Heck, I think we destroyed a mountain the last time we fought. Damn, she just kept coming at me during that one. She really is quite stricken by you. The Ice Queen has the hots for the Fire King and vice versa. If by stricken and hots you mean she wants to beat the crap out of me, drag me into her torture chamber, and be her toy for all eternity, then yes, she really is stricken and hot for me. A cold shiver ran down his spine, causing him to involuntarily shudder at the thought of the great sadist. Seriously, don't even joke about that, even I in all my awesomeness gets chills whenever I think about what she would do to me if I fuck up and get caught. I'm just saying how I see it. She took a sip from her coffee, pondering for but a moment before she opened her mouth once more. You said you needed a place to lay low for a while, right? Then how about you rejoin the little assassination group that you established a few years back? You know, the very same assassination group that you entrusted to me. Night raid him. Tempting. I haven't really worked my true profession in a while, and the prospect of walking through the shadows to take out a target is really tempting. I'm sure, why not? It's not like I'm needed elsewhere right now, my spy network is mostly self-sustaining, and I'm sure that the other generals of the rebellion back in the HQ will contact me if I'm needed. It would be a great pleasure working with you again. Ex-General Naruto. She gave a mock salute with her mechanical hand. The pleasure is all mine, Ex-General Nenda. He responded with a salute of his own, causing the two of them to laugh for a few seconds. So how many members do you have in your motley crew? Counting myself, 7. And that's 2 more than the last time I met you, 2 more than the first incarnation of the group. He said bitterly as if recalling a rather sore memory from the past. So Akagame, Rabak, Leon, and Brat still part of your group, or did they, and by they I mean that pervy Rabak, finally run out of luck? He asked, hoping to steer away from the bloody memories of the past. They're all doing well. Leon and Rabak misses you, Brat wants a rematch, well Akagame. The girl finally opened up to the others, becoming good friends with all of them, despite her still being socially awkward and all. Good to hear, wouldn't want to see such a cute girl to develop a cold heart, we've got far many of those in our army already. He took one last sip from his cup of tea, carefully taking note that his cup was now empty. So how about the new blood, care to tell me something about them? I think it could wait, after all you are going to meet all of them soon. She replied as she took the last sip of her own drink. Fair enough. Though I can't help point out that the way you talk about all of them, it seems like you're this group's mother, or should I say father, Ms. Hunk of the rebellion. Swoosh. Naruto swayed his body to side, evading the cup and platter which was tossed at him by his fellow rebel. Mama, you'll never hit me if you don't come at me with intent to kill. He chuckled as he grabbed his cane, which was resting on the side of the table, with his right hand. Speaking of killing intent, I'm sure you can feel it, right? Of course, there's around 27 of them, 7 stationed in the rooftops, 2 muskets aimed at me, and 5 aimed at you, while the other 20 is trying to move and lurk around in an attempt to surround us. And if I may add, doing a bad job at it. She casually answered, as if she and her companion weren't slowly being surrounded by what was most likely the defense force, who were hell-bent on capturing either of them. Yup, felt them coming a mile away. But you did miss one. There was an assassin reeking off ill intent eyeing me from a distance before you came here, but it seems like he backed off and vanished. Probably got scared of me or something. And how did you figure that one out? Well, nothing escapes my eyes. Is that supposed to be a joke about your eyesight? No, it was me trying to act cool and you ruining it with that response. He answered dryly before a small sigh escaped his lips. Even with his eyes closed, he could already see that she was smiling wryly. How did they even find me here? I was sure that I covered my tracks perfectly when I ran away from the capital. Nenda scratched the back of her head while chuckling sheepishly as she turned her face away from her companion, refusing to look at him face to face due to embarrassment. I may or may not be responsible for that. And I like this place so much. He uttered under his breath, mentally making a reminder to himself to have some of his allies to look after the owner and staff of this place, just in case they were actually imprisoned because of him. Figures that I really can't have a nice day to myself anymore. He added as his left hand moved underneath the table, slowly fishing up a couple of pellets from one of the pouches tied to his belt. So do you want to take care of it, or should I? I thought you were trying to lie low. Well, before I vanish into the darkness, wouldn't it be the best to go out with a bang? You were always one for theatrics and massive amounts of collateral damage. If you're volunteering, then by all means, take care of our little problem. Yeah, about time I do something awesome, since it's been around 10,000 words or so, and by that point, people tend to get bored with the lack of any heart-pumping action scenes. So you better brace yourself, this is going to be one bumpy ride. I'll ignore the first part of what you said since it doesn't make a lick of sense, but for the latter part, well, this isn't my first rodeo, cowboy. That was lame. Touché. Anyways, I'm going to cause hell drawing a shitload of attention to myself, so I need you to get as far away from me as possible, otherwise you might get caught or worse, burned. She rolled her eyes as she took a drag from her now dwindling cigarette. Fine, I'll stay out of the kitchen. Really not the time for bad puns. So where do we meet up after this? Assuming that you won't get caught. I won't. Well, if you don't get caught, I won't. Then the new base is 10 kilometers north of the capital, around the mountain range. You really can't miss it, as long as you know where to look. In the off chance that you are captured, please don't tell anyone about our base. First of all, I won't get caught, and second of all, I'd rather die first than tattle on my friend, and last of all, I won't get caught. I'll be there by tonight. On a completely unrelated note, Tella came to stock up on ingredients for ramen. I'll be staying there for a while. That can be arranged. Oh, and just so we're clear, please try to not get lost on your way there, okay? That happened once and only once. It wasn't even my fault, I took a shortcut to get to the rendezvous point faster. I mean, how the hell was I supposed to know the Esdeath was taking a bath in that lake I passed? Excuses. TCH, whatever, you owe me one, okay? I won't bill you for the ramen you eat during your stay. You know how to speak my language? Yes, cause I'm fluent in Naruto's. She took one long drag from the cigarette before carelessly flicking it aside. So I guess on three. The whites of his teeth shone brightly as he broke into a large grin, a grin which was soon mirrored by Nenda. 3. The two shouted in unison, signaling the breaking loose of the proverbial hell. Several things happened before the defense forces in the rooftop could even fire their rifles at the two wanted criminals. Naruto's body went into overdrive, moving faster than the soldiers slowly conveying on them could ever hope of conceiving. The blonde revolutionary kicked the table in front of him upwards, scattering the dishes, tablecloth, and cutlery laying upon the table amidst the air, the cloth serving as a momentary cover and distractions from the shooters above. He then took out the pellets and quickly passed them on to Nenda. With a small smile on her face, the leader of Night Raid caught the small pellets before she proceeded to throw it forcefully to the ground. The pellets cracked against the hard surface of the floor, slowly breaking apart as an eruption of billowing smoke that covered almost the entire area emanated from the small pellets. The chaotic symphony of gunfire shortly followed after the obstructive explosion as the soldiers stationed along the rooftop fired bullet upon bullet in the hopes of taking out the two revolutionary. The concerto lasted only for a few seconds before a great gust blew over the area, slowly clearing the smoke which shrouded their target's presence. However, when the smoke receded, there were two bodies riddled with bullets sitting in the place where the two generals talked. The fat bodies of the two rich and twisted men that irritated Naruto earlier that day. Now that was relaxing. Revolution. Cafe Shiki inside the cafe. Ichisasama, thank you for the meal. A cheerfully energetic voice echoed within the interior part of the cafe as a certain blue-haired man who had a content smile upon his face as he walked out of the restroom with a certain spring with each of his step. His smile was soon hidden as he quickly took out a handkerchief and promptly used it to wipe away red specks and smudges that tainted most of his lips, chin, and mouth. With the same spring on his step, he walked towards his table, carefully noting that his belongings, the tools of his trades, were still in place, left not stolen or misplaced by anyone else. That felt so good, so filling, so revitalizing. It was just what he needed for now. Yes, he was still definitely hungry, it would take more to completely fill his hungry belly, but with this small snack, he would be able to perform to the best of his abilities. 100% of his abilities. All of that he would use to kill the guy that fat man wanted dead and finally be rewarded with a lifetime worth of food. He will never be hungry ever again. Oh, it would be so glorious. All the sweet, tender, and succulent flesh that he would consume, meats of many ages, of different kinds, prepared in different ways. Never to be punished or barred from eating his meals ever again. It was within reach, he couldn't wait any longer. He stopped wiping his face as he reached his table, carelessly discarding the piece of cloth to his side as he bent down and carefully took the pole-like object wrapped around in white cloth that he brought with him in this cafe. It was his weapon of choice, his tool for murder, his ticket to a lifetime of yum-yums, his tigu. It was at that moment that as he picked up his tigu that the sound of an explosion followed by a symphony of gunfire erupted all over the place. The other customers of the cafe panicked, some ducked under their tables, some covered their ears, others ran out of the store, some screaming out in shock and panic. The assassin on the other hand simply smiled as he took all of a sudden occurrence with careless stride. Without a care in the world, the killer walked out of the cafe, completely missing the sight of a panicked man running out of the washroom before lurching into the ground and then vomiting all over the floor. For within the restroom, the man saw a sight that he would never forget. There he saw a dead body, a mutilated body of a woman, her head eyeless, earless, and tongueless head detached from her body, rolling on the ground in a pool of blood and white substance that trailed down the body's legs. Chunks of her flesh and muscles were missing from her face, arms, torso, abdomen, and legs, revealing much bone and torn flesh. It was definitely a horrendous sight. Meanwhile, smoke was still wafting over the immediate area when the blue-haired man walked out of the cafe. With the ever-present grin on his face, the man opened his eyes, which he used to carefully scan the area. Crimson-colored orbs quickly following the rough shadowy outlines that ran away from the smoke screen. Ah, why does it have to be so smoky all over here? It's like Akari rampaged all over here. So let's get this out of the way. Yeah, definitely get this out of the way. I need to get this out of the way so I can see where that guy went. As those words left his mouth, the blue-haired man ripped the cloth which surrounded his tigu, revealing to the smoke-filled world what was hidden within. It was a Bacento, a pole arm with a long black shaft, that with a curved scimitar-like blade with a thick wide edge and a black backside on the end. In an instant, an insane grin appeared on the man's face as he held his tigu in one hand, posed to swing the long pole arm. Now let's get rid of this smoke. He screeched out as he energetically swung the Bacento. Apeliates. Out of the southeast winds, he shouted with even more ferocity than before, as the blade portion of his tigu glowed an ominous and eerie green, before it released a large gust of wind that tore through and cleared the obstructive smoke. Red eyes looked intently as the smoke receded, and before it did, he spotted a flash of yellow escaping from the side of his vision. Target in sight. With an insane grin on his face, the man started running after his target, only to quickly slow down to a walk when a loud gurgling sound erupted from his stomach. Ugh, damn it, I'm getting hungry again, he said as he stared down at his stomach, who chose this moment to make itself known once more. Ugh, can you wait a bit? After we kill the guy, we be set for life, the man said, conversing with his stomach as he walked towards the direction of where the man ran, slowly following behind a line of soldiers that also went towards that direction. Burgle. We can eat him afterwards, but you're right, I'm still hungry, man. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Wait, I can probably get a snack or two while I follow that guy. Burgle. Did yes, get a snack. I'll definitely get a snack. That would be great. Now be patient, okay, just a bit more, an itsy bitsy bit more, okay. The appetizer was definitely good, a really good sampling of what this city can offer. He licked his lips. But I still need more, so it's time to move on, take a bite out of the next dish in line. You'd like that, right? Burgle. Yeah, I'd like it too, so let's eat that man, okay? The blonde-haired guy that fat man wanted me to kill. He's the main course, okay? We'll get him soon, okay? So bear with me. He looked away from his stomach and turned his attention towards his Bacento. You'll help me out, right? Help me so that I won't ever get hungry again. Help me so we can always eat whenever we want, right? A black mist was slowly discharged off the tip of his Bacento. It was a vile, murky, and almost muddy blackness in the form of wind that quickly expanded and covered the blue-haired man's fame. Ikeas, god of the northeast winds, he said as he slowly blurred from the eyes of mortal men, the dark winds hiding his existence from the world, and with that the assassin vanished underneath the late afternoon sky, another appetizer and his main course awaiting to be devoured. Itadakamasu. Thank you for watching. I hope you all enjoyed the story. If you did, please like the video. Also consider subscribing and sharing this with your friends. This will really mean a lot for me. I'll see you in the next one.